Support for this program is provided in part by Guido's Fresh Marketplace. Welcome to my cooking show, The Natural Cook. I'm Anna Goshenson. Winter has arrived with the cold winds, with the white snow outside that is very beautiful, but we really have to get our bodies ready for this cold sweep. So today I have a very special guest, Janet Poole, who has traveled to us all the way from East Greenbush, New York. She is an avid gardener. She is a real foodie who uses food as medicine. She has tried it on herself, and by changing her diet, she has cured the diseases that she has been afflicted with. And so we are very excited because today we are going to talk about fermentation. Fermentation is a very, very old art. It's been with the human culture for eons. However, somehow in our reality it has been lost a little bit. And so Janet discovered it for herself about 20 years ago?
Well, somewhere around that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we want to know what is so special about fermentation.
Well, like you said, fermentation is a really ancient way of preserving food. And how it works is we live in an environment, although most of us don't recognize this, it's just full of billions and billions of different types of microorganisms. And some of them are really beneficial for us. And without them, we could not live on this earth. Fermentation makes use of some of the most beneficial ones. What happens is we chop up some vegetables. It's very simple. We prepare vegetables. We create an environment in the vegetables in which the non-beneficial microbes can't live, and that's just simply by using salt. And the beneficial ones thrive in that environment. They partially digest the food, and when we eat fermented vegetables, we're actually eating a living source of microbes that are just wonderful for our digestive health.
Yes.
And you know, Anna, that a lot of our immune system starts within our gut.
Exactly.
So,
this is exactly the point that I wanted to make, that for people to realize that most of our immune system, like 70%, is in our gut. And unless we populate it with good bacteria, we will not be able to fight all these invaders. So today, we are going to show you, even though Janet said that there are very many different vegetables and fruit that you can ferment, but today we are jumping at red cabbage, beets, carrots, ginger and garlic for flavor. We are going to use Himalaya pink salt, which is very, very special. It has a lot of minerals in it. You do not have to use this salt, although this is very beneficial. You can use, of course, kosher salt, just not iodized salt. And you have to remember that, you know, our ratio is 3 tablespoons of salt per 5 pounds of vegetables. However, salts differ in salinity. So Janet will explain to us how she goes by tasting it. So what are we going to start with, Janet?
Okay, well, I've already cut up a half a cabbage and and we have another half to cut.
Okay.
And there are a lot of different ways that you know, mostly it's personal preference, how you like what the size of the pieces that you like. So what would be the advantage of cutting it thinner? Well, it would ferment a little bit more quickly because there's more surface area.
Okay.
Other than that, it's really a matter of taste. If you like the texture of a larger piece, then go for it.
Well, of course. Well, Janet is going to start grating carrot and beets, and I'll also show you that beets can go into fermentation, being cut in cubes, because it's nice to kind of bite into this fermented vegetable. And as you see, Janet suggests that we use organic vegetables. She is a gardener, so some of the vegetables came from her garden,
like this
one. And also she does and she does not advocate peeling it even, because as I said to you already before in many of my episodes, that most of the nutrients are in the skin of the vegetable, and the closest under the skin, if you have to peel it, the better off you are getting all these wonderful nutrients. So
I like to use a grater with large holes, because it gets a little bit bigger of a piece, and they maintain their you know, their firmness a little more that way. And I know people, if you can believe this, there are people who don't like beets. So
yes,
don't use them if you don't like them.
I can believe it, you know.
I love beets. I eat beets every day.
Yes, beets are wonderful. They are actually a very good vegetable to consume to improve the quality of your blood. You know, the red color of the beets is not just a coincidence. You know, it coincides with the color of our blood, and it has very many nutrients that nourishes our blood. So it would be great to include beets in your diet, but also raw beets, and especially fermented beets, will taste very different than cooked beets. Mm-hmm. Cooking really concentrates the sugars. So here it is, you know, the fiber is still preserved, and so it is really great to eat a raw beet, and especially fermented beets.
Oh, they smell so good.
I know, it smells wonderful. Also, as you noticed, we use the red cabbage. We can use green cabbage as well, and many people ferment green cabbage. However, the brighter the color, the more saturated the color, we know that the more nutrition, antioxidants that come with it. And so today we are showing you that you can have a very, very vibrant here. Yes, I can cut it. A very vibrant mix that will definitely have wonderful benefits. So Janet, can you tell me what are we going to do once we have this? What is the next thing?
The next thing, once we have all of our vegetables prepared, we're going to add some salt. And a lot of people really like to have a specific recipe, you know, X weight of vegetables to a certain amount of salt. And I have a lot of trouble following a recipe. It's just how I am. So what I've always had really great success with, and other people that I've shared the fermentation process with also have, is to go by taste.
Yes.
I start out with a half a teaspoon, and I keep tasting it until I can taste salt.
Yes.
And then it always works that way for me.
This is very good advice, because that way you really are not a slave of all these calculations, and you can learn to trust your palate, and that way you will never over-season whatever you're cooking. So Janet, what should we be watching for? Like when we're fermenting, and you will show us how we do it so that people can do it at home. But I heard that there could be mold developing, which of course is you know, fermenting is part of that process.
Well,
what should we watch for?
The mold, the only reason that the mold would develop is if there are some pieces that float up to the top,
yes,
because everything that we do, all the vegetables are going to be
yes,
submerged under the surface of,
right,
of the liquid.
Right.
And if some do float up to the top,
yes, yes,
what I do is I scrape them off.
yes.
And if you're squeamish about that, well, then you may, you know, want to start over. But it rarely happens,
right,
if you're careful not to. And we'll talk about how to keep everything under the surface of the liquid.
Okay. So I think that we have like good amount of carrots.
Okay.
Now we can transfer them. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we need to add more, or we can start with our
I think
flavoring?
we can start with this.
With flavoring, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And the ginger, and of course, if you don't like ginger, don't use it. I usually grate the ginger on the smallest surface, the
yes,
smallest part of the grater, because ginger is so intense.
Well, ginger is extremely beneficial for your health. Ginger helps you digest food. It helps you if you have a cold coming on, if you had like motion sickness. So ginger really is a wonderful, wonderful addition to any cooking that you do.
I think I'll try this.
Yes. Okay, so
Anna, could you explain why we need the whole cabbage leaves?
yes. Well, we need whole cabbage leaves because once we massage the food, and we actually will be, by massaging salt into food, we are creating this drawing out of moisture. That's what salt does. It breaks down the fibers, it draws out the moisture, and we need that liquid in order to have the vegetables submerged in it. And then if we don't have enough of the liquid, because they always have to be sitting in liquid, otherwise, as you know, they will be drying out or creating mold. And cabbage is something that we put on top to cover these vegetables so that they would be really safe, and to ensure that there wouldn't be mold developing. And sometimes you have to add liquid if you don't have enough liquid that is generated by the vegetables, because massaging vegetables takes time. Like, for example, when I'm doing fermentation, I could massage my cabbage up to 30 minutes, and sometimes you don't have that time. So then you can let it sit, you know, and this liquid will come as well. But because we don't have the time today on the show, so we are going. Another method is that you can use a liquid of salt diluted in boiled water, and then you can add it, and that will be your extra solution. All right.
I always add water.
You always do.
I never seem to. Maybe I don't have enough patience, but I just don't. I don't get enough liquid, so I always add some, and I find that it just makes me feel more comfortable, really, that everything is going to stay under the surface of the liquid.
Yes. So what about garlic? Do you grate it as well?
I don't. I put the garlic in whole.
Oh, okay.
I don't. I think it just is a little bit of a milder flavor. Okay. I think the garlic is essential, but
yes. So is it too close? Is good for this?
Is good.
Okay, wonderful.
So
all right. So what we are going to do now, we'll just clean up a little bit. Actually, I can move this. Let's put this away.
Okay.
I can move this so that we can both massage our vegetables. And so this is our salt. So we start with, why don't we take the garlic out for now?
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, we don't need to massage the garlic. So I'll just start with a half a teaspoon.
Yes.
I think it's much easier to add more than if you add too much, then you need to grate up more vegetables and really. So of course we've washed our hands.
Yes, of course.
So
all right. So
this is where it can get really messy.
Right. But this is good. This is good exercise for your fingers.
It is. And you really get up close with your food this way too.
Yes. So Janet, tell us what inspired you to learn about fermentation, and what was your source of learning? I know that there are a lot of websites now that you can go to.
Yes, there are. There are a lot of websites that you can go to, and I would really encourage people to explore them. I learned from a man named Sandor Katz, who he really essentially revived the fermentation method in the modern world. He brought it back to life, and he used fermentation, fermented foods, as medicine, and restored his health. And he's written several books which are absolutely fascinating to read. I've read them like a novel. So I went to a workshop with him.
Yes.
And learned fermentation then. We talked about, in that workshop, I remember talking about how many different types of foods are fermented, that we never really think about that much. Bread is a product of fermentation. It doesn't have any living organisms in it because it's baked. Kombucha is fermented. Beer and wine are both products of fermentation.
Yes.
Miso is?
Yes, miso,
Yeah.
as well as tempeh. And of course, I know that with soy foods, that tempeh and miso are really wonderful foods to include into your diet because of exactly that concept.
Yeah.
That they have fermented, which means that they already pre-digested, and it is much easier for your gut to do the rest. So with, we hear a lot about microbiome, and this is really the place in your gut that needs to be populated with the bacteria. Microbiome is already part of you when you are born. When you are going through, when the baby goes through a birth canal, then it gets populated with all this wonderful friendly bacteria that will sustain that little human being for the rest of his or her life. And this is why, cesarean section is not really so wonderful, because you don't get that inoculation from the very beginning. And we have now big prevalence of autoimmune diseases, and also we really find that there are a lot of illnesses that people have to fight, and what the least difficult way to take yourself back to health is to do this very frugal thing. If you go to a supermarket or natural food store, then you know how much you have to pay for a little jar of fermented vegetables, probably about $7 a pound for that little jar.
And some of the fermented things that you can buy are not going to really be beneficial. The microbes in them are not going to be alive. For example, if you buy sauerkraut and it's been pasteurized, that means it's been heat treated, and it will not, nothing is alive in it.
Right.
So that's really something to keep in mind.
And that's another point to make, that this friendly bacteria is only alive when it is in raw state. That once you cook it, it disappears. And also, how long do we keep it in fermentation?
Well, what we're going to do, if we can just maybe back up a little bit.
Yes.
I think we've rubbed this, we've massaged this pretty well. It's really, the fluid is coming out.
Okay.
So we're going to actually, Anna, could you get a glass of water?
Sure.
Because I think, and we didn't taste this, so.
Right. Okay.
It needs more salt.
Right. All right. So you add more salt. I'll bring some water.
The fermentation process itself, while it's actively fermenting, takes anywhere from a week to 10 days to 2 weeks, depending on the temperature of your house or where you keep it. In my house, which is cold in the winter, it'll take longer. In the summer, the fermentation it happens so fast. It may be done in less than a week. Does it taste salty?
I think you can add a little more.
Okay.
So you need just enough salt to start this process, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. The ratio is not really for the process of fermentation to be able to happen. It's just for to be that's the ratio that produces the flavor that you want.
Well, actually, the salt, the main role of the salt is to keep the decomposing microbes from turning it into a big pile of smelly mush.
Okay. So you do need that ratio
do need the salt.
of 3 tablespoons. Otherwise, you are not going to get proper fermentation.
You need to have, tastes just right now.
Okay, let me see.
You need to have just enough salt so that the beneficials are going to survive. So let's add this water.
Okay.
So
you just add tap water.
I usually add filtered water.
Okay, but you don't boil it?
No.
Okay.
And maybe we'll add another glass.
Okay.
And meanwhile, I'll start putting this into the jar. It really is a messy process. I usually put the garlic right in the bottom.
Okay.
And it makes, I call it a beautiful mess.
Right. It is beautiful.
And I just use a glass jar. Some people have a fancy fermentation crock, which can be, they can be bought on the internet. I think the glass jar works very well. It's very easy to clean and make sure that, there's not going to be anything in there that you don't want.
Another question I wanted to ask you, whether you need to sterilize your jar or a place where you are going to be fermenting your.
I don't.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
And we'll pour this in.
I use enamel pot. And it works as well. Okay. All right.
Now we're going to.
So we are pushing it down.
We're pushing it down, and I think we're going to need another glass of water, and then we should be really good. So we're pushing it down, and we'll talk about how to keep it submerged. There are a couple of different ways.
Yes.
Let's punch it down.
Right. Okay. Good.
And yeah, that's good. Actually, let's put it all in. You can't.
Yes.
I don't think you can put too much water in.
Okay. Do we need to add more salt if we are? No.
No. There's plenty of salt.
All right.
So we're going to push it down and try to get the sides
clean.
Because we just don't want anything lurking around above the surface.
Right.
So that's a very nice.
Okay. So actually, from that point of view, it is really more. It's easier if you have a jar or a container that you are using that has straight sides, because then it's much easier for you to clean it and to manipulate it.
So we're going to take the cabbage leaf,
right,
and just lay it on top of the vegetables.
Yes.
And fold it so that it sort of follows the contour of the sides.
Right, and adheres, right, to the side of the jar.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
And this actually gets these cabbage leaves get fermented too, and that's one of my favorite parts.
Right.
I have a couple of different ways of keeping the cabbage submerged. You have to weight it down.
Yeah. So you need a weight. Another thing that you need is a weight, and you can use some kind of glass weight. Okay.
You can use just rocks on top of the, of course, very, very clean rocks on top of the cabbage leaves, and that will work.
Okay.
I bought these beautiful weights. I found them on the internet.
Okay.
They're called fermentation weights.
Okay, great.
And they just go in like this.
Okay.
And another way I have is I cut these discs from some food-grade plastic containers, and they will work just as well as the glass, but they're just not as lovely.
Then do you need to cover it with something?
Yeah. What we're going to do is to hold everything down really well.
Yes.
I just use a glass jar or a glass of water.
Okay.
And I just put it on top like that.
Right. So
and then that will press down any air bubbles that are still in there.
Okay.
And we're going to just clean the whole. We'll clean it all up. And,
What about covering? Do you need to cover with a cheesecloth?
I just put a piece of cloth,
Right.
like a clean napkin or cloth napkin or
Right.
dish towel. So what will happen in about 3 days,
Yes.
or 4 days, or maybe even a little longer, you'll notice when you press down on your jar,
Yes.
you'll see bubbles.
Right.
And that's
what you're looking for.
Yep.
Right.
And that's the microbes doing their thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Decomposing.
And so
right.
we press until the bubbles are pretty much out.
Yes.
And then I do that each day.
Right.
And after about 4, 5, 6 days, I'll start to taste it.
Right.
Or sometimes you could just smell it, and you know that it's ready by how delicious it smells.
Yes. So the speed of fermentation depends on the temperature that your vegetables are sitting in. For example, if you are doing it during the summer, of course, the environment is warmer and it will take faster. But in the winter, it might take longer. But generally, how many days are you looking for?
About a week.
Okay.
If you have a house that's anywhere near 70 degrees, it takes just about a week.
Right. And
if it's colder, it takes longer.
And then what do you do? Once it's fermented, what do you do, Janet?
You put it in the refrigerator.
Okay.
You put it in the refrigerator, and that will stop the fermentation process.
Yes.
And it will last in the refrigerator for several months. I have a friend that keeps hers for up to a year.
Right. So
there we are.
Yes. Okay. So as you can see, the purpose of this show was for you to be able to do it at home, because this is really easier than home cooking. You just have to take your raw vegetables, make sure that they are good quality, make sure that they are bright and firm, and then just chop them up. If you are doing a lot at a time, you can even use food processor with a cutting blade, so it will be much faster for you. And then use good salt. Make sure not to use iodized salt.
The iodine will sort of compete with the bacteria.
Correct. And then let this miracle happen. And then it is going to perform miracle for you in your gut. We in general eat this as a condiment, and it's wonderful to eat it every day. And however, you can also use it in dishes. Like, for example, I grew up in the former Soviet Union, and we had a wonderful dish called vinaigrette, where there were cooked, chopped beets and carrots and potatoes, and then pickles and sauerkraut, that fermented vegetables that were going into it. And that was very delicious. Then
we just have to remember that you don't want to heat it, because that will destroy the bacteria.
Right. The purpose of it. So how much should you eat a day?
Well, I eat a small bowl, and I'll put it on top of salads. I'll put it, if I'm making eggs, I'll eat it along with that, and greens. It's just delicious with greens, and I just love it.
Okay.
It tastes so fresh and alive to me.
Great.
And there we are.
So let's taste.
Okay.
Okay. It is so crunchy. It is tart. It tastes very powerful. When it tastes powerful, then it really gives you a good health boost.
It just tastes alive to me. Yeah, which it is.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you make it at home.
Yeah.
We'll post the recipe on my Facebook page, and just kill it.
Thank you, Anna.
Support for this program is provided in part by Guido's Fresh Marketplace.